The plane was somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, Air Force One, heading home from Beijing, and President Donald Trump was talking to reporters, casually, informally, the way he does at 30,000 feet when the cameras feel distant and the pressure of the summit is finally behind him. A reporter asked about Iran, about the nuclear program, about the red line that Trump had declared publicly repeatedly for months. No enrichment, zero, not for 5 years, not for 20 years, never. And Trump's answer: Trump said he would accept a 20-year suspension of Iran's uranium enrichment if Tehran gave a real guarantee, in an apparent shift from his previous demand that Iran permanently halt its program, and his pledge to ensure Iran can never attain nuclear weapons. 20 years, not permanent, not zero, 20 years, and then Iran can enrich again. The man who declared we will not allow any enrichment of uranium just said 20 years is enough. The man who said Iran can never have nuclear capability just accepted a timeline that ends in 2046, and Iran's response came within hours. From New Delhi, from Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas, Araghchi standing at a BRICS summit. Araghchi said Tehran has no trust in the U.S. and would only be interested in negotiating with Washington if it was serious. He said contradictory messages had raised Iranian doubts about the Americans' real intentions. No trust, contradictory messages. The President of the United States just moved his red line on an airplane without consulting his negotiating team, without a framework, without any reciprocal Iranian concession, and Iran looked at it and said, "We still don't believe you." So here is the question that every analyst, every diplomat, and every government watching this conflict is now asking: if Trump moved his red line once, what else is he willing to give up? And if Iran doesn't trust America after a decade of broken deals, is there any agreement possible at all? Before we go further, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this situation is changing fast. Now I want your answer in the comments. Do you think this is real diplomacy, or just controlled escalation? To understand what happened on that plane, you need to understand where this red line came from and why it mattered so much. For months since before the bombs fell on February 28, the Trump administration had one non-negotiable demand: Iran's nuclear program must be dismantled permanently. Trump's key negotiator Steve Witkoff said, Iran must give up all enrichment of nuclear fuel in any deal because enrichment enables weaponization, and we will not allow a bomb to get here. All enrichment, completely, forever. Trump himself declared in April, there will be no enrichment of uranium. He added, we will not allow any enrichment of uranium. This was not a negotiating position. This was declared as a fundamental principle, the reason America fought this war, the justification for killing Iran's supreme leader, the core demand that made everything else, the blockade, the billions spent, the sailors who died, worth it. And on Friday, May 15, 2026, on Air Force One leaving Beijing, Trump changed it. Asked about the 20-year proposal, Trump said, well, I looked at it, and if I don't like the first sentence, I just throw it away. He threw away his own red line. In a sentence. To reporters on a plane. Let's be precise about what changed on Friday, before May 15. U.S. position: Iran must permanently end all uranium enrichment. No exceptions, no timeline, no enrichment of any kind, ever, after May 15. Trump said he would accept a 20-year suspension of uranium enrichment if Iran gave a real guarantee. He said, I don't want them to feel like they have a win, but acknowledged a 20-year moratorium could be sufficient. 20 years. Then what? Then Iran can enrich again, with whatever centrifuges it has rebuilt, with whatever nuclear knowledge it has accumulated. In 2046, Iran gets its enrichment program back, and the war that was supposed to end Iran's nuclear ambitions forever produced a 20-year pause. Trump also said that recovering Iran's highly enriched uranium is more for public relations than anything else, downplaying what remains one of the key sticking points in negotiations. More for public relations. The 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, the material that is one technical step away from weapons grade, the stockpile that Trump spent months demanding. Iran's surrender is now, according to Trump himself, mostly a PR issue. Not a security issue, a PR issue. But what happened next changes the situation completely. The contradiction that Iran noticed here is why Iran said it doesn't trust America, because this is not the first time America has changed its position. The chronology is damning. In March, Witkoff said Iran must give up all enrichment. In April, Vance's team proposed a 20-year halt, which Trump then publicly rejected, saying he didn't want Iran to feel like it had a win. Then last week, the U.S. was reported to still be proposing a 20-year halt, and now on Friday, Trump accepted the 20-year figure again. The U.S. position has moved from permanent ban to 20-year moratorium to "I don't like the 20 years" back to 20-year moratorium in less than 8 weeks. The level of trust is probably almost at an all-time low, said Robert Malley, former U.S. Special Envoy for Iran. It's hard for them to take at their word what they're hearing from us officials. The Iranians have to be wondering how long any commitment will last and will be very hesitant to give up something tangible in exchange for anything that isn't ironclad, something tangible like 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium once they give up their stockpile. Malley said, they can't recapture it the next day. This is the core of Iran's calculation. If Tehran surrenders its uranium and America then exits the deal, as it did in 2018 when Trump withdrew from the JPOA, Iran gets nothing back. The uranium is gone, the sanctions return, the leverage is lost forever. Why would Iran trust an administration that has changed its nuclear red line 3 times in 2 months to honor an agreement that its predecessor withdrew from 8 years ago? And then there is the specific issue of where Iran's uranium actually is. Iran is believed to have roughly 970 pounds, approximately 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium buried beneath the rubble of bombed nuclear sites. It is unclear exactly where it is and what state it is in following the strikes. Buried beneath rubble, unknown exact location, unknown condition. Trump said Iran had agreed to have the stockpile removed, but then reneged, adding, they said that they can't remove it because they don't have the technology to remove it, they don't have the type of tractors, and only China and the U.S. have the technology to remove it from the obliterated nuclear facilities. They don't have the tractors. The President of the United States used the word tractors to describe the specialized equipment needed to excavate buried weapons-grade nuclear material from beneath collapsed underground facilities. This is the technical reality of the nuclear deal negotiations in May 2026.44. Kilograms of 60% enriched uranium buried beneath bombed tunnels in unknown condition that neither side has a clear plan to retrieve is the central obstacle to ending a war that has cost $29 billion and killed thousands of people. Iranian parliamentary spokesman Ibrahim Raisi warned that Tehran could enrich uranium to 90% purity, considered weapons grade, if attacked again. If attacked again, Iran will go to 90% weapons grade. That statement was made this week during a ceasefire, while the man who ordered the bombing of Iran's nuclear sites just said the uranium stockpile is mainly a PR issue. While the nuclear negotiations were collapsing in slow motion, the Strait of Hormuz remained closed, and the human cost kept climbing. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the UAE on May 15, meeting with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. Modi said, keeping Hormuz free, open and safe is our highest priority, and in this matter adherence to international laws is essential. India's highest priority. India, which imports 85% of its oil, has been among the most economically devastated nations by the Hormuz closure. India was forced to hike gas and diesel prices for its 1.4 billion citizens. A country of 1.4 billion people paying more for fuel because 2 governments cannot agree on who controls 33 kilometers of ocean. Iran's deputy parliament speaker articulated what has become Tehran's new strategic doctrine. The Strait of Hormuz is our nuclear weapon, their nuclear weapon. Iran entered this war expecting its missiles and Hezbollah to be its deterrent. They were degraded. Iran stumbled upon something far more powerful, the strait. According to analyst Bazarg Mirsharafeddin, Iranians are also surprised. The deterrents they didn't count on that much. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz became their most valuable card. Now they are tying the future security of Iran to the management of Hormuz. They didn't count on it, and now they cannot give it up, because the moment Hormuz reopens, Iran loses its only remaining leverage over the most powerful military force on earth, and it knows it. On May 7th, 3 U.S. warships were targeted by Iranian missiles, drones, and small boats during a transit of the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM said none of the vessels was struck. Trump confirmed the incident, saying, "They trifled with us today. We blew them away. They should not have done that today." 3 destroyers simultaneously targeted. During a ceasefire, U.S. forces destroyed 6 or 7 small Iranian boats after they allegedly attempted to interfere with the transit of 2 US-flagged commercial ships and 2 Navy destroyers, the USS Truxtun and USS Mason. Small boats destroyed, missiles fired, drones launched during a ceasefire that both sides publicly say they are honoring. Iranian state media claimed that the Iranian Navy fired 2 missiles and hit an American naval frigate. CENTCOM denied that the missiles struck the ship. Iran says it hit an American warship. America says it didn't. One of them is lying. Both are operating in a waterway where the rules are unclear. The ceasefire is disputed, and every incident could be the one that ends the truce entirely. Araghchi speaks from New Delhi. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was in New Delhi attending a BRICS Foreign Ministers Summit when Trump's Air Force One comments became public. Araghchi said Tehran has no trust in the U.S. He described contradictory messages from Washington as raising Iranian doubts about America's real intentions. He said the Pakistani mediation process had not failed but was in difficulty. No trust. In difficulty from the man responsible for Iran's foreign policy, speaking publicly to the international press the same day Trump announced his softened nuclear position. Araghchi said, "What was said that the United States rejected Iran's proposal was a few days ago when Mr. Trump tweeted it was unacceptable. But after that, we received messages again from the Americans saying that they are willing to continue the talks. Think about that sequence. Trump tweets, totally unacceptable, American officials then send private messages, we still want to talk. Trump lands in Beijing, says, 20 years is fine. Iran's foreign minister says publicly, we have no trust in you. This is not a negotiation. This is a series of contradictory signals from a government that cannot agree with itself trying to negotiate with a government that has been bombed twice in 12 months while talks were ongoing. Iran described its latest proposal as reasonable and generous. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai said, the Islamic Republic has proven that it is a responsible power in the region. We are not bullies. We stand against bullies. We stand against bullies. That is the language of a government that believes the moral weight of this conflict is on its side. A government that was bombed while it was negotiating. A government whose supreme leader was assassinated while peace talks were supposedly ongoing. A government that has seen every deal America made, the JPOA in 2015, the ceasefire in 2024. The current ceasefire in 2026 either violated or withdrawn from unilaterally. Iran offered to transfer some of its stockpile of highly enriched uranium to a third country in its response to the latest US proposal but rejected the idea of dismantling its nuclear facilities. Iran proposed separate negotiations and offered to dilute some of its highly enriched uranium and transfer the rest with a provision that it be returned if Washington exits any eventual deal. Returned if Washington exits. This is the clause that tells you everything about Iranian thinking. Iran will move the uranium, but only if there is a guarantee that if America breaks the deal again, the uranium comes back. Iran's negotiating position is built entirely around the assumption that America will eventually leave the deal, because America already left the deal. In 2018, the same president who is now demanding Iran dismantle its program is the same president who previously withdrew from the agreement that constrained it. Even during the 2013 to 2015 nuclear deal talks, the decades of mistrust between Tehran and Washington were impossible to ignore, said John Feiner, former U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor. Impossible to ignore in 2015, infinitely worse in 2026 after 2 bombing campaigns, an assassination, and a ceasefire that is violated daily. Let's step away from the geopolitics for a moment and look at what ordinary Iranians are experiencing. An IRG commander spoke at a gathering to honor the memory of Iran's slain supreme leader Ali Khamenei with a picture of Khamenei resting on his seat. The commander said, the issue of death has been resolved for our fighters. We fight for victory, but we also consider martyrdom a great blessing. A photograph on an empty chair. The chair of the man who ran this country for 35 years, killed in a bunker beneath Tehran on February 28, while his country was negotiating with the country that was about to bomb it. Netanyahu said in a CBS 60 Minutes interview that regime change in Iran is possible, not guaranteed. He said, is it possible? Yes. Is it guaranteed? No Israel's prime minister publicly discussing the possibility of overthrowing Iran's government during a ceasefire while negotiating with that same government. This is the world Iranian civilians are living in, their supreme leader killed, their nuclear facilities bombed, their economy blockaded, their country under ceasefire violations daily, and the prime minister of the country doing all of this is publicly saying their government might be overthrown. And Iran's military has responded to all of this with one consistent message. Brigadier General Akrami Nia told Iranian state media, "Our forces are on full readiness to protect nuclear sites where the uranium is stored. We considered it possible that they might intend to steal it through infiltration operations or heliborne operations." Heliborne operations. Iran's military is preparing for America tool and helicopters on its soil and physically remove the uranium. That is how broken the trust is, not just diplomatically broken, operationally broken. Iran's military is actively preparing to defend against the possibility that American forces will physically attempt to take their nuclear material, and in that environment the negotiations are supposed to produce a deal. While the nuclear negotiations stalled, the Israel-Lebanon peace process produced its own surreal moment this week. On May 14 and 15, the United States hosted 2 days of talks between Israel and Lebanon at the State Department. Military delegations will hold security talks at the Pentagon on May 29. The State Department will reconvene political negotiations on June 2 and 3. The April 16 ceasefire has been extended by 45 days. 2 days of talks. The State Department between Israel and Lebanon, but Hezbollah, the armed group that controls southern Lebanon and has been firing rockets at Israel throughout the ceasefire, was not invited, was not included, was not consulted. There was no significant announcement coming from the extensive talks, which did not include Hezbollah, no significant announcement from talks that excluded the main military actor. This is the peace process. In 2026, governments negotiate, armed groups ignore them. The Lebanese government moved to ban Hezbollah's military activities and called on it to place weapons under government control. Hezbollah ignored the ban. Lebanon told Hezbollah to disarm. Hezbollah said no, and the talks at the State Department continued as if Hezbollah's position was irrelevant in a country where Hezbollah has more weapons than the Lebanese army. Indian Prime Minister Modi, whose plane was guided in and out of Way airspace by military jets, received an honor guard and met Way President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. The two sides agreed to explore increasing Way's ADNOC oil storage in India to up to 30 million barrels, military jets guiding civilian aircraft, 30 million barrels of oil reserves being established. India is not waiting for the Strait of Hormuz to reopen. India is building strategic reserves, planning for a world where the strait stays closed, where Iranian control of the world's most critical waterway becomes the permanent new normal. Modi said, "Keeping Hormuz free, open and safe is our highest priority, from the leader of 1.4 billion people, whose country was forced to raise fuel prices for its entire population, because two governments cannot agree on 20 years versus permanent, on uranium that is buried under rubble that nobody can reach, on trust that was destroyed." Before the first bomb fell, the U.S. stock market fell from its records on Friday, joining a worldwide drop for stocks as higher oil prices sent a shiver through the bond market. Markets falling, oil prices up, bond markets nervous. Every day the Strait of Hormuz stays closed. Every day the negotiations produce contradictory messages. Every day the ceasefire is violated and the diplomacy stalls. The global economy absorbs another blow, not a dramatic collapse, just a slow, steady bleed of confidence, of investment, of growth, of ordinary people's savings and retirement accounts, of families paying more at the pump and more at the supermarket, of businesses paying more for shipping and energy and raw materials. This is what day 78 of the Iran war costs, not in tanks and missiles, in stock market points and bond yields, in gas prices and grocery bills, in the quiet erosion of economic confidence that accumulates invisibly while presidents give interviews on airplanes. The narrow path to a deal. Officials suggested the moratorium would last for at least 12 years, a compromise between Iran's earlier proposal of 5 years and the U.S. proposal of 20. After the moratorium, Iran could enrich at 3.67%, the level allowed under the 2015 nuclear deal. Other clauses under discussion include no underground nuclear facilities and snap inspections. By the UN, 12 years, 67% enrichment afterward, snap inspections. This looks remarkably like the 2015 Iran nuclear deal that Trump withdrew from in 2018, the deal he called the worst deal ever made, the deal whose collapse led directly to the war we are now in. America spent $29 billion killed. Iran's supreme leader bombed its nuclear facilities, blockaded its ports, and may end up with a deal that looks strikingly similar to the one it started from. That is the narrow path to peace, and even that path requires Iran to trust that this president, unlike the last time, will not simply walk away. On May 16 today, Trump sent Iran a new nuclear proposal and warned that swift progress was necessary to avoid serious consequences. Serious consequences, the language of a threat from a president who just softened his red line. Iran has seen this combination before, olive branch and threat simultaneously, Iran's foreign minister Araghchi said, "Every time a diplomatic solution is on the table, the U.S. opts for a reckless military adventure. Is it a crude pressure tactic? Or the result of a spoiler once again dumping POTUS into another quagmire? Whatever the causes, outcome is the same. Iranians never bow to pressure. Never bow to pressure. That is not bluster, that is doctrine embedded in the revolutionary identity of the Islamic Republic. The republic that has been under American pressure since 1979, that has never in 47 years made a concession under military threat, that was bombed while negotiating and chose to close the world's most important oil corridor rather than surrender. If the talks collapse, if Trump's serious consequences lead to resumed military action, the second round of this war will be fought against an enemy that has 70% of its missiles intact, 30 of 33. Hormuz sites operational, Chinese weapons delivered during the ceasefire, Russian intelligence support, and the Strait of Hormuz still under its control. Round 2 will not look like Round 1. The most likely outcome. No full deal. No resumed war, just this, indefinitely. A ceasefire that both sides violate, negotiations that produce contradictory statements, a strait that is technically open to some ships and closed to others, a uranium stockpile buried under rubble that neither side can reach, a U.S. president who changes his red lines on airplanes. An Iranian foreign minister who says there is no trust, and the world, India, Europe, Asia, America, paying higher energy prices and absorbing supply chain shocks month after month while the people who started this situation figure out whether they can find a way out of it. Iran's deputy speaker of parliament has said, "The Strait of Hormuz is our nuclear weapon, and unlike actual nuclear weapons, it has already been used, not as a threat, as a reality, and that reality 78 days in shows no sign of ending." Here is what happened this week. Trump flew to Beijing, changed his nuclear red line on the way home, said the uranium is mainly a PR issue, sent Iran a new proposal with a warning of serious consequences. And Iran's foreign minister stood at a BRICS summit in New Delhi and said, "We have no trust in America at all. The level of trust is probably almost at an all-time low," said former US Iran envoy Robert Malley. "Once they give up their stockpile, they can't recapture it the next day." That sentence is the key to everything. Iran knows what it has. It knows it cannot get it back if it gives it up. It knows what America did the last time a deal was made, and it knows that the president who moved his red line once on an airplane in casual conversation with reporters can move it again. In any direction. At any moment. History is full of wars that ended with deals that looked remarkably like what was available before the first shot was fired. The Iran war of May 2026 be heading toward exactly that kind of ending. If it ends at all, tell me where you are watching from.